Good morning, dear colleagues. Now we shall learn the clinical anatomy of the eye. Let's begin from general structure of the eye. Here it is, a picture which demonstrates eyeball. The organon visus could be divided into two components. The eyeball, here it is on the skin, and the additional apparatus of the eye, which includes the eyelids, the connective tissue of the orbit, the fascia, the lacrimal apparatus, and so on. And today's our aim is to discuss the structure of the eyeball, first of all. So, this is a skin, you should know it, and now let's try to draw the scheme together step by step. So, an eyeball could be compared with a Russian doll which called Matryoshka. Do you know Matryoshka? There are several dolls which are inserted one another. And the most large, the most peripheral doll is this yellow sheet, because an eyeball is organized as three sheets which are arranged one enclosed to another. And this is most peripheral, most external sheet, which called fibrous sheet. It is divided into two parts. This number one part is most convexed. So it is externally protruded and it is completely transparent for the light. And another portion of first sheet, it calls number two sclera. Sclera is of white color. When we look one another, we can see this white color sclera quite well, and it plays role of protection of the eyeball from external light and from any injury, because it's quite strong, quite dense. Then we can say that all these two parts can be combined as tunica fibrosa bulbi. Tunica fibrosa bulbi. Very interesting detail that from posterior surface tunica fibrosa bulbi prolongates to the sheet for optic nerve. Now we can't see optic nerve itself, but nevertheless we can see its sheet, perinephrium, and we can say that perinephrium and tunica fibrosa bulbi, they are a single complex. And now let us go inside, and the next doll inside of Matryoshka is the second sheet, which has a lot of vessels. That's why we can call it vascular sheet, tunica vasculosa, and it is also divided into several parts. The most anterior part of it calls iris in Latin. This term means the name of very beautiful flower. This flower is of different colors as iris in different men. So when we watch the eyes of one another, we can be amazed that there are different tunes of the iris, like in this flower. So this different color depends from the pigment inside of it. So main aim of this part of vascular sheet is to protect an eye internal space of an eye from the light. So light can be entered the inside of eyeball only through this hole. This hole calls pupil. So the main role of the iris is to protect the light from entering the eyeball, exclude the pupil. So light waves can enter eyeball only through this hole, only through the pupil. Next part of the vascular sheet, number 4, has triangle shape. It is made from soft muscle, and that's why it can be contracted and make regulation of possibility to see close positioned things according to our face, to our eyes, and far positioned things. For example, when we look at the landscape, this number 4 part calls corpus ciliare, corpus ciliare. Cilia in Latin means lashes. So it would be necessary to say that this term, corpus ciliare, has not any common with the lashes on eyelids. So it is similar name, but not common things between them, between externally located lashes on the eyelids and with the corpus ciliare, which is inside of the eyeball. And most posterior portion of tunica vasculosa calls chorioidea. Chorioidea. There are a lot of vessels inside of it, both venous and arterial, and the old name of this part also is tunica uvealis. Uvea in Latin means the grape. So the dark sorts of the grape is quite similar to the tunica uvealis. Again, due to pigments inside of it. This pigment inside of tunica uvealis makes the space inside of the eyeball is dark due to all the internal surface is dark. And we can combine all three terms as tunica vasculosa bulbi. Tunica vasculosa bulbi. So tunica vasculosa bulbi is second doll inside of matryoshka. And now third doll. Here it is, of yellow color. Again, here it is, number 6. It is retina. Retina, most internal sheet of eyeball, and it is important, be attentive, that retina prolongates in posterior surface of eyeball into the optic nerve. So we can say that retina is most anterior portion of optic nerve. So they are connected with each other. It's very important to understand that through retina we can evaluate the situation of the brain. Because, for example, after injury, when patient had fall down and he has a trauma of the head, so there is a question: was this patient, had this patient a contusion of the brain or not? And one possibility to answer this question is to observe his retina, this number 6, most internal sheet of the eyeball. So there are a lot of vessels inside of retina, and if these vessels are distorted, if these vessels are enlarging it, are widening it, so we can understand that this trauma had a contusion of the brain had place. And that's why after each head trauma, the ophthalmologist obliged to evaluate the conditions of retina. So they try to answer the question, had this patient contusion of the brain or not? So that was 3 doses which I inserted one another and which form the sheets of the eyeball. But this special shape of eyeball, it depends from internal core of eyeball. And this core is containing from liquid, from gel similar structure, corpus vitrum, and from very interesting structure as a lens. So let us try to investigate the core of eyeball. So number 7 is space which called Anterior Chamber, camera anterior, camera anterior. This chamber is fulfilled with a transparent fluid which calls humor aquosus. And this fluid can be passed through this number 8 angulus iridocornealis, the space between cornea and iris, which is a special way strengthening by ligamenti pectinati. And this angulus iridocornealis play a role in pathogenesis of so-called disease glaucoma. You know, glaucoma is increasing of internal pressure in eye bulb, and that's why this place inside of eye bulb extremely important for understanding the role of it in pathogenesis of the disease glaucoma. And now number 9, where it is placed, number 9? Number 9 we can see posteriorly to the iris. So it is place which is called as camera posterior. And we can say that camera posterior and camera anterior together, they are fulfilled with humor aquosus, a special fluid which is transparent and which play role of nourishing of the internal structure of the cornea, because there is no any vessel in cornea in norm, and if it appears these vessels, so the eye bulb become blind because the light can't penetrate these non-transparent places in cornea. That's why humor aquosus, it plays a role of nourishing of cornea by way of diffusion. And to close this place, number 9, camera posterior, we need to have a posterior wall, and this posterior wall is formed by lens. Lens is a special centrally located structure inside of eye bulb, which is extremely important for concentrate all light waves into retina. Retina has a lot of receptors for transforming the light into electrical impulse in the nerve, in the optic nerve. So exactly on retina, the waves of light should be focused, and lens play this role. It concentrates all the waves in the one place in retina. And when we look at this picture just now, there is a question: how this structure, centrally located lens, is fixed inside of the eyeball. Now we can say it is swimming, it is floating inside, but nothing hold is. So how it is hold? So let us explain. Now number 11 is a special ligament which is from all sides 360 degrees surrounds the lens and fixates lens to the number 4 corpus ciliare. So zonula ciliaris is translated into English like ciliar belt. So the role of it is role of fixation, lens to the corpus ciliare. And for example, in some injury, when this zonula ciliaris could be damaged, could be teared, so lens could be displaced in another position inside of an eyeball, and the ability to see in such patient is extremely decreased. Now, the next and the last structure inside of eyeball, so we can call it number 12, corpus vitrum. Gel similar structure which fulfilled the eyeball inside, and also the shape of the eyeball is due to this content. So corpus vitrum is a gel type content of the eyeball. So unfortunately, in some traumas, when the sheets of eyeball are teared, so through this penetration, the corpus vitrum, this gel, could be leaked out, and sure, the eyeball loses its shape, it falls up, and that's why again the patient becomes blind. Now let's try to enumerate the structures which are content of eyeball. So from posteriorly anterior, number 12 is corpus vitrum, number 10 is lens, and in camera anterior and posterior bulbi, humor aquosus. So this content, which is from three structures, this content serve as a special media through which the light waves should pass before they meet retina. Retina as receptor structure of eyeball. So this core of eyeball plays several functions. First function is providing the shape, rounded spherical shape of the eyeball. Second function of humor aquosus is providing the nourishing, it means trophical function for the cornea, and third function, especially of the lens, is function of concentrating of all waves of light into retina for possibility to recognize the not only light but the outline of all things around us. And now some very interesting things concerning the dimension of the eye bulb. This number 13 line calls axis bulbi, exactly axis external. It means this dimension is connecting of 2 points. Most externally located points anterior on the anterior pole of the eye bulb and posterior on the posterior pole of eye bulb. And I'd like to point out very strange in biological sense fact that you know that all biological features of every organism are similar to one another, but nevertheless they differ. And for example, if we try to compare the height of the population, we can say that normal height of man is in the range of 140-45 centimeters and of adult man, and 200 centimeters. And for example, both of them very tall men of 2 meters of height and very short men of 145 centimeters of height, they should have the same dimension of the eyeball, exactly 42 centimeters. It is very strange fact that axis bulbae external in norm in all healthy men should be the same. Men and women should be the same. Should be 24 millimeters. Both in very tall 2 meters height and very short of 145 centimeters. So it's strange. And we can use another line, this red line, number 14, which calls axis opticus. So this line, it connects the most internal part of retina, exactly here, where the head of the arrow we can see, this place calls macula luta, or fovea centralis. This place on retina is place where the possibility to see is most good because of lot of receptors are located in small regions, and this macula luta. So this place they call also as place of best seen. And we can say that axis opticus is an axis which is directed to this place of best seen on the internal surface of the eye bulb. So it means in retina. And last very interesting detail in our scheme is another small cavity on the posterior portion of the eye bulb from internal side. Number 16 is discus nervi optici. Discus nervi optici. In this place, nervus opticus enters into eye bulb, and then it becomes the internal sheath, the retina. And quite important to understand that inside of this small part of retina there is no any receptors. This discus nervi optici has no receptor cells, and that's why this place also called as blind point of retina. If the light wave meet this place on retina, we can't see nothing. It's very interesting. So now we have finished this scheme. All this designation you should remember and could explain. So be ready to draw by the heart this picture and to recognize all these designations on our electronic test LMS 3.